Hello, everyone. Welcome to Get Nerdy with Bergie. I'm your official host, Nicole Bergen, the lady with the red glasses. And today I'm so excited to have a special guest, Mr. Dave Smith. Little background on Dave. Dave, say hello to everybody on LinkedIn. You're live.
How you guys doing?
You guys, thank you so much for coming. It's really a special treat to talk to Dave. He has worked with some of the most amazing talent across the country. I've personally learned a lot from Dave myself. I think it's really important to revisit your tapes, your performances on camera. And he's got great insight about the little things that we all do that we don't even notice that we're doing. So super excited to have him here in today's LinkedIn Live, Tuesday, 10 a.m. on the West Coast. What is that? 1 o'clock Eastern for those of you that are finishing your sandwiches. I'll keep an eye on the chat for your questions, but just to get started, Dave, how did you get into coaching people on camera? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, basically, I started as an on-air journalist, reporter, and anchor. And I found that the comments that I got from my management were absolutely useless to damaging. Uh, well, I said, if I ever, do something else, I'm going to try to remember this and find ways to give actual comments that can help. And then after working in research for 45 years and seeing how the audience evaluates on-air talent or even people doing Zooms and other kinds of performance, I was able to combine the knowledge of being on camera, hearing how the audience responds to that, and then working up a whole group of tips that can't make someone horrible great, but they can make someone nearly great great. So, and it can improve anybody's work. They're just tips that help you communicate when you're in a box like we're in today, which is not a natural setting. And a lot of people forget to use their natural communicative skills that if you and I, Nicole, were in the same room, we would use, but we fail to use those when we're in this little box. And it reduces us, it has bad audio. And so this is exactly when we need to use all of the tips that we have at our hand.
Yeah, I know something you shared with me in the past is the camera can diffuse you by, I can't remember what percent you said, but it diffuses your mannerisms, it diffuses your energy. So a lot of times when you've coached me, it's, a little bit bigger, try it with more energy, and it feels super awkward as the person doing it. Like you're almost like screaming at people across the screen, or you're so, too much, but you've always kind of help me see that when you rewatch the tape, it doesn't look as boisterous or as big as it feels for the person doing it. Can you elaborate on that?
It's really critical that when you're, quote, performing or doing a presentation, that you try to find about a 10% level of more energy. And the reason for that is that, again, we're in a box, it's going to be reduced, but you also want to stand out from everybody else that's just having normal conversation. You want to get their attention. So you want to be kind of 10% bigger and better. And then you will find, and it's important, one of the key things you said is to go back and look at your work, because it will feel unnatural as you try these techniques in the beginning, and you want to normalize them, but you also want to see how they look. And then you want to combine how it looks with how it feels to perform it, because that will give you the confidence to play at that level from that time forward and really make it work.
You said something that really resonated with me in the beginning, and I think it does for a lot of people that are trying to maybe get started or just, they feel awkward on camera. It's awkward to look into a lens and try to create a connection with someone. So I'm curious what lessons have you learned? You've coached a lot of people. How to make a great first impression across the screen? What are some, lessons from the years, the history that you've had coaching people?
Well, first of all, there's a number of things that you want to be sure are set up for you to be successful. Okay. One is that you want the camera to look you in the eye. All right. If the camera is down on you, then you look like a child and you lose credibility. If it looks up on you, then you look like daddy or mommy and you're looking down on your customer. So make sure that the setting is working for you, and the best lighting for you. And the other thing is, be sure that you try to use all the tools that you have available to you now that we're squished down. Use your forehead, use your eyes, use a tilt of the head. I'm gesturing as I'm talking because I know that when I physically move, it puts energy into my voice. The other thing is, it looks really unnatural to sit and have your shoulders totally locked down. So if any of our viewers are watching this and you're leaning on your desk, that's the worst thing you can do. You want to be free, upward. I always call it having leading with your heart. Have your heart out in front of you. That'll get you in the right position. It'll help you breathe better, use your voice better, and then use all of these tools we have. Now, if we were talking about a big screen, which we do sessions for people, on television, hosts, and that kind of thing, we would add all kinds of physical movements and other things that can enhance that even more. It's kind of a different topic. Maybe we can touch on it a little bit. But for this, you want to use as many of those techniques as you can. You want to use your face, your voice, up and down, not leaving it at the same range for the entire thing. Never read something that's on the screen. Don't.
Wait, I want you to repeat that one because a lot of people get nervous about this. Let's
No,
hear
no.
that again.
That's a visual aid. And remember, people are watching so they can see what's on the screen. You do not need to read it to them. This is not kindergarten. So you know the points that are on the screen. You discuss them, you give them context. You might even enlarge on the topic, but you do not read what you have prepared to put on the screen. It's the worst presentation. It will send people right away to the leave button.
So
So
what so how I mean how do you overcome that? I mean I've coached so many people, they just can't let go of that script. So what do you do?
people who are a little nervous about this want what they feel is every support necessary. But in many cases, I describe performing a lot like downhill skiing, if any of you are downhill skiers. Everything about skiing tricks you, okay? So you're on the hill. What should you do? You should point your skis downhill so you get a little bit of a motion and then you can start turning. That feels very scary when you can't ski. So what do? You lean back on your skis, they slide out from under you and you fall down. So your natural urges to to preservation and safety with presentation do the same thing to you. I'm going to sit real still and I'm going to read everything on the screen, and I'm all of those instincts lead you down the wrong path. You have to be willing to commit. You must feel a little nervous. And if you're going to grow, you have to feel nervous each and every time you're on camera, and try something new, try a big gesture, try to do so that you learn what that feels like and attach it to what it looks like. And you will find that being brave definitely will improve your presentation 10 to 15%. And that's kind of norm. If you can get to a 20% or even 25% improvement in performance, that's really, really growth.
Okay, so let me summarize what I'm hearing you say. I'm going to put this into three buckets. The first bucket, you talked about using the tools. So your eyes, looking into the camera, your face, your framing. You talked about not leaning on the desk, things like that, like using the space appropriately. Let's call that bucket number one. One of the second bucket I'm hearing you sort of inch towards is the voice, the energy, the arms, the body language. That's how I create emotion and connection across the screen. And between those two things, is there a third, setting up to give a great first impression, or would you kind of say those are the two main ones?
I think there's a lot incorporated in those. There are a lot of different pieces, but I think in there, in those two buckets are 80% of what you can do. But I also think vocal variation would probably be
Mm.
third third one. Uh,
Can you give an example of that? Like,
yeah,
give me
like,
two examples.
well, I think a lot of people would say we're here today and we've got a big agenda, so let's just jump right into it so that we can get all the way through. I would I'm like, we've got a lot to do today. So, let's get going. Anybody who's got a question, raise your hand. It's wide open for discussion, but let's get going. So there were natural pauses in there where I took a breath. You didn't even notice. But when you're new at this and you pause for a second, it seems in your head like it's an hour. But pauses are important. They're one of the most powerful communication devices. You say, let's say there's a big point on your chart, we've got to make a 20% gain. Now, you all know that's big. So that pause would be really easy for me, but somebody who's not used to using a pause like that will feel like it was an hour long. But it's a very effective use to uh, actually put a pin on a point. Give people just a moment to think about it, and then come back with maybe a higher voice range or a little more volume to kind of get out of that point and move on to the next one. So keep your voice up and down. Do not fall into being very drone.
And even when you just said that, your forehead, you were using your hands. I think and as this is probably disclosing more than I would like to about my own personal life or background, but for some of you that know me, know that I used to be a professional mascot, and one of the things that has helped me in my presentation skills is when we're teaching people to be a mascot, right? You have these big costumes on. So you have to use your facial expressions and your hands to break outside of your mascot bubble. And I know this is a crazy analogy, but it's very similar on the camera because the more expression you use, your hands, your voice, and your energy also elevates the more you move.
Yeah, and when somebody gets hired to be a Disney voice of a character, I've had the occasion to be able to go watch them record their voice for the narrated character. First of all, when you go in a very silent, soundproof booth, everything you say you can hear really well. But what they do is they go in and they act the part. If that character is falling off a mountain, they're going, ah, and falling off the mountain. So they actually use the physical movements to create the right energy for it to be wedded with the video and be appropriate. Now, that's an extreme example for us, but if I don't use my hands and my shoulders and my neck and my head to talk, I lose so much animation in my voice and my presentation. And I frankly can't do it without doing it anymore. 40 years. So I mean, it's but and here's the bottom line. And this may be controversial, but it's the truth, and we've proven it with hundreds of thousands, if not nearly a million now, respondents in research. Performance equals credibility. In other words, you can be a PhD and all these other things, and if you get on camera and drone away, you lose in this forum your credibility. Now, if people read your book, okay, you're credible, and that, but performance equals credibility. So if you want to be credible on a Zoom or in a TV commercial or as a TV host, you have to be able to perform.
There you have it. I think one other thing I would love for you to touch on, Dave, that was really awkward for me in the beginning. You know, I taught a lot of classes during the pandemic. I don't even know how many minutes or hours I spent on Zoom. I learned a lot from that experience, watching the tapes with you and whatnot. But I think the trust in the eyes, can you elaborate on that? You know, being able to see someone's eyes
Yeah,
and how that establishes trust.
you want to, first of all, men and women, you want to have a haircut where your eyes are visible. Okay, so if a viewer can't see your eyes, or customer, you're never going to have success. The eyes are the window to the soul, and they are really the key to communication. So you have to do that. Um, Also a tip that I ought to get into is the cocktail party look. So Nicole and I are here together. Let's say this is how you add a third person to a conversation. So two people are standing at their desk speaking. A third person walks up and you've got to recognize them. So you're the speaker. You might look at that person who came and make a nice gesture like, hey, I know you're here, but I've got to finish this conversation. And then eventually you might say, hey, is it urgent? Is it something? No, no, I can wait. Well, we'll join in with this. And so how these things call the cocktail party looking works when there's three people, you spend two-thirds of your time looking at the main person you're speaking to, and then you spend one-third of the time with a quick glance and a smile or just a raise of the eyebrows at the other person. So, I've been kind of co-anchoring with Nicole, so I've been trying to look at the screen, but also recognize that Nicole's with me about a third of the time with my eye contact. So that's how you pull people together. If you were on a dais and you had other speakers, you might practice that, you might use that as well.
And then in this type of environment, what about looking up at the camera to smile with your audience? They're kind of the third person in the room, right?
They are. Yeah,
So
no,
I'm
you
looking at you, but I'm also looking up to the rest of you that are watching. Hi, welcome. And then I'm
exactly.
looking back at you. So we're having a three-way conversation with the people across the screen, whoever they might be, and then also my co-host, Dave.
And if you look at really good anchor teams on television, they're really good at doing that. One may
Mm-hmm.
be speaking, the other's waiting, but they work it in. Or maybe the sportscaster walks over, but they're not ready to throw it to he or she yet. There's
You
this
see that? I was watching the Warriors game, you know, the after game with it was Charles Barkley and it was Shaq and there was four of them, and just like watching how they go back and forth with each other and then looking at the camera and talking to the viewer, like the viewer is the fourth person in the room. So there is definitely an art to that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose that contact. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the other tricks is that actually, like if there are four people, it's really hard to have two or more people do this. But a lot of people will simply, when they're finished with a statement they're making, they'll put their hand down, which means if you're Charles Barkley and you've just said something, you put your hand down, it means it's open for Kenny or Shaq or anybody else to jump in. So there's some visual signals, but that's a whole different thing.
So, okay. So establishing trust through the eyes, you mentioned like that kind of that energy, the body language. What do you think is, you've personally been with people that have had a lot of experience and still are able to find ways to improve their performance. What's a go-to that you notice right away with a lot of talent that you've worked with that you often kind of tweak or fix that, is universal?
I would say the number one issue is that they are too conservative with their gesturing. Um, we have a rule that if you gesture, I'm going to tilt this down for a second. If you gesture inside the width of your body, inside the width of your body, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, look, I'm going to go over here or whatever. It it is not good.
It's
It is
awkward.
it is
It's
not
like
only not, but
Anchorman. What do I do with my hands?
it's a weak position. It's a weak, weak position. As soon as your hands get outside the width of your body, your power doubles. Okay.
Mm.
Really bold, and you get way out here, it can triple and quadruple. So, you know, when in person or on a bigger screen, that is a technique, and a lot of people are afraid to use it, but it is powerful, and it actually works so well that sometimes if you're in meetings, you can almost get too much control in a session if you're really using, you know, big gestures because it loads you up with power as a communicator.
Well, I just while you were talking, I stood up because one of the things that I've noticed that's helped me do what you just said is standing up because I have more energy, especially if I'm tired. I've done a lot of calls that day. I'm standing up right now. So if you guys can get a standing desk, that's a great option to help support you and bringing that energy, right? Using those arms, you're free from the desk. I'm not standing in front of the desk. I can back up. I can come. I got to be careful though that my framing and my eyes, I'm still connecting with all of you, but you have more energy when you stand,
Definitely.
right?
And, in the old days, the vast majority of news anchor desk were standing. They've gone to sitting. I actually prefer standing. And the other thing is, if you're in a meeting of 6 or 7 people, maybe you're presenting, and the key person or a key person is not responding correctly. This is something Nicole and I worked on together. Stand up and walk over and stand behind that person's chair. You want
It's
to
a
get,
tip from moderating days, right? When you
yeah,
moderate focus groups, you got to shut down Jane in position one. You
yep,
just go walk up, stand right behind her.
yeah. It can either wake them up or shut them down. But you're looking up at maybe the presentation in the front of the room and they're doodling or something. You just walk over there and kind of stand behind them for a second and continue to present. They become the good student really quickly.
All right, we've got only a couple minutes left, Dave. Such a fun conversation. So many great tips here. I'm gonna do a couple rapid fire questions for you. First one, are you ready? What do you think matters more, being polished or having energy?
I think having energy and being authentic.
Okay. Most overhyped camera tip.
Leaning in too far to camera.
Like this. Like I'm really close. Okay. How do I come across confident without feeling fake or salesy?
That's a good one. I mean, being authentic, all of these tips we're giving you are to just be added to who you are. So we're not trying to teach you to be me or Nicole. It's you, and you just layer these tips on to enhance your performance. So stay you. I mean,
Hmm.
if they hired you, if you're the head of sales, there's a reason you're there. Now let's just get you better at what you're doing.
All right. I think that's good advice. Another one that came in, how do you build presence if you're naturally more soft-spoken person?
Well, you're going to have the confidence to go beyond that. Again, this is that place where you've got to feel that little ick in your stomach. I'm pushing it a little bit. And, you can do this at the mirror in your closet, or you can do it at home, or you can watch your presentations. But soft spoken is tough. It's difficult. You're going to need more power, and you're going to need the gestures. You're going to need, your 10% might be a little lower than Nicole and my 10%, but you're going to need to come up. Every performance needs to be above who you are on a day-to-day basis without going to fake. That's why we say sort of 10%.
And if I can just add to that, the tool that you've helped me use to see that is watching yourself after the fact. You think that you're being super obnoxious or too confident or too crazy, but when you actually go back and watch the tape, it doesn't look that forced as it felt, especially if you're more soft-spoken, right? It feels really uncomfortable.
It's really important that you be able to tie the feeling of going big to what it looks like, so that next time that you've got to rise to that ick level to be at the right place.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our time for today. What a great conversation. Mr. Dave Smith. He's works with some of the biggest on-camera personalities. We have quite a few talent coaches within our company that can help support you do a better job on camera, whether it be in this environment of the virtual walls or in front of the camera. You've got to do press releases or press conferences and things like that. Feel free to reach out to us. Visit us at growwithelevate.com to book a demo. We can talk you through what a consulting package might look like. Until next time, I can't wait to get nerdy with you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Dave, thank you so much for coming.
Santa Claus.
All right. Bye now.